Sognefjord plunges more than 1,300 meters below sea level, carving one of the world's rare submerged canyons that frames Norway's coast with sheer, glacier-polished cliffs. Do you know Lovatnet Lake once produced deadly tsunami-like waves after mountain collapses in the early 20th century, wiping out farms and leaving twisted trees and sunken remnants haunting its emerald waters? On the Lofoten Islands, a unique natural theater is where jagged granite peaks plunge directly into the Norwegian Sea within a few hundred meters, creating one of the world's steepest island mountain ranges. Do you know that the Lofoten Islands host the largest annual gathering of Atlantic cod, an ancient migration that built a stockfish economy stretching back to the Viking Age and still shapes local life? Shallow bays and wind-carved fjords collect sunlight like bowls, producing eerily warm pockets of air that allow rare Arctic flora and seabirds to thrive here, far above their expected latitude. Black sand beaches sit beneath snow-flecked summits, and the same currents that bring kai also paint the surf in impossible turquoise and jewel grays. Villages cling to the shoreline in neat rows of red and ochre rohrbuer, their weathered planks drying the century-old stockfish that once crossed Europe as a staple. Walk the piers in Reinebringen or Henningsvær, and you can still feel the tidal rhythm that connected these islands to trading routes as far-flung as the Mediterranean. The light here is another stranger. During summer, the midnight sun bathes the mountains in molten gold, while winter nights are lit by curtains of green and violet that dance low over the sea. Those northern lights often appear beside beaches, turning sand and surf into a stage for impossible reflections. Culturally, Lofoten preserves a living museum. Fishermen still hang cod on wooden racks to dry, a process unchanged by centuries and visible against the outline of modern wind turbines in the distance. This contrast, raw tradition alongside contemporary life, is the island's quiet story, and it guides any visitor from the salt-cracked harbors inland toward the next wild chapter. Follow a mountain trail westward, and the terrain arcs into secluded lagoons where migrating birds rest before crossing to the mainland or to Arctic breeding grounds. From these lagoons, the narrative of Lofoten spills outward, inviting travelers to continue east toward the Lofoten National Park or north to the whale-rich waters beyond. And beneath the surface, kelp forests and cold-water coral gardens host an undersea drama that few land-bound visitors ever fully grasp, yet which supports the visible abundance above. Understanding that underwater web explains why the islands were not only a scenic backcloth, but a biosphere that shaped history, livelihoods, and the routes we follow to the next Norwegian wonder. Lovatnet's glacial waters hold one of the planet's most vivid turquoise hues, changing with melt and light. Do you know Lovatnet was struck twice by cataclysmic rockslide-triggered tsunamis in 1905 and 1936 that flattened farms and reshaped the shoreline? The color comes from glacial flour, microscopic rock particles ground by ice and suspended in the lake, scattering blue and green wavelengths. On calm days, the surface becomes a polished gemstone, reflecting steep fjord walls and the ragged silhouette of Sognefjord. Yet that beauty hides danger, as centuries of glacial carving left brittle cliffs perched above narrow arms of water. When mountains collapse into Lovatnet, they generate waves that roar through the fjord like trapped thunder, swallowing everything in their path. Villages such as Innerdalen and Innerdalen were rebuilt after those disasters, but the memory clings to the place and informs local caution. Today, hikers climb ridgelines above the lake, not only for the view, but to witness how geology and human life meet in fragile balance. Standing on the shores, you feel the lake's paradox. Tranquil beauty layered over geological fury that once reshaped lives. Lovatnet is a living page of Norway's wild story, where color and catastrophe keep both visitors and locals watchful and captivated. From this rim, the road winds toward the high peaks beyond, where crevassed glaciers feed rivers that carved fjords centuries ago. Each bend reveals new perspectives, waterfalls spilling silver, pastures holding small herds, and distant summits dusted with snow even in summer. In winter, northern lights sometimes drape the valley, turning Lovatnet into a cold, shifting canvas beneath the dancing sky. And in every season, the lake keeps teaching visitors a lesson about respect for raw landscapes and the fragile boundary between calm and catastrophe. Saltstraumen Maelstrom funnels some of the planet's most violent tidal surges through a narrow strait near Bodo. Do you know Saltstraumen Maelstrom can push hundreds of millions of cubic meters of seawater at speeds up to 20 knots, creating whirlpools and standing waves that have shaped local fishing traditions for centuries? From above, the channel looks deceptively calm, until the tide turns and the entire landscape becomes a roiling theater of eddies and foam. Locals time their boats and harvests to the rhythm of those reversals, a living calendar driven by lunar pull and coastal geometry. Below the surface, nutrient-rich waters churn upward, drawing in clouds of plankton and attracting enormous shoals of Arctic cod and seabirds. That explosive productivity made Saltstraumen an ancient meeting place where fishermen, traders, and storytellers gathered along the rugged shorelines. Geology plays its part. The narrowing of the strait between island and mainland amplifies tidal range and channels energy into focused currents. Over millennia, those forces sculpted nearby bays and fjords, linking Saltstraumen to the deep channels that run toward Lofoten and the open Arctic Sea. Today, scientists study the maelstrom to understand turbulent flow and its effects on marine ecosystems, while divers probe wrecks preserved in the powerful currents. Fishermen still follow ancient knowledge, navigating by subtle surface patterns and the timing of the tidal exchange to harvest the seas responsibly. Saltstraumen remains proof that even in a sparsely populated landscape, water can engineer one of nature's most dramatic stages. Its whirlpools are not mere spectacle, but a living engine that ties islands, towns, and ecosystems into a continuous, pulsing line of life. Researchers deploy sensors to map turbulence and discover microhabitats where rare sponges and anemones cling to rock faces battered by current. Those discoveries influence conservation plans that balance tourism, local livelihoods, and fragile coastal biodiversity. Travelers who linger here learn to read the sea like a book, watching color shifts and ripple patterns that reveal the pulse of the tide hours before it turns. The more you pay attention, the more Saltstraumen reveals itself as a connective force, a tidal heart that pumps life across Norway's northern fringes. Sognefjord cuts more than 200 kilometers into Norway and plunges to depths exceeding 1,300 meters, making it one of the planet's deepest and longest fjord systems. Do you know that its narrow arm, the Norway Fjord, is so vertiginous and gorge-like it earned UNESCO World Heritage status for its almost uncaged natural geometry? Glaciers like Stegastein feed icy melt into the fjord, sculpting hanging valleys, blue glacial rivers, and waterfalls that thunder into salt water. Tiny farms and stave churches cling to steep slopes here, surviving a climate shaped by fjord bottle microclimates and centuries of human grit. On a quiet morning, the water mirrors cliffs so perfectly, you can mistake reflection for rock. And in the deepest basin's cold, dark currents, harbor ancient marine life, adapted to high pressure and low light. Fishermen and scientists alike still discover species and ecosystems in Sognefjord that challenge what we thought fjords could hold. From the ferry decks, you can see waterfalls like Vøringsfossen and the ribboning Innerdalen Valley, which peek through green curtains of birch and pine. In summer, orchards and tiny fruit farms thrive in sheltered pockets where warm sun meets fjord-moderated temperatures, producing apples and berries you wouldn't expect at these latitudes. Flom, tucked on a branching arm of Sognefjord, links sea and sky with the Flåmsbana railway that climbs from harbor to high mountain plateaus in minutes. This dramatic ascent reveals how the same water that carved the fjord continues to shape human pathways across rock and ice. Kayakers slip silently through narrows where eagles wheel above and seals bob near cliff bases, while cruise ships trade scale for intimacy as they thread these deep channels. From Sognefjord's depths, we trace a living thread up to high mountain passes and railways, where tomorrow's segment of our journey will reveal the peaks that fed these waters. But first, stay with the fjord a moment longer and imagine standing on a sun-warmed rock as tides and glaciers whisper ancient instructions into your ears. You'll hear villagers tell of moonlit rides by rowboat and of merchant ships that once threaded these arms carrying barley, timber, and secrets between fjord-side communities. Each hamlet, from Balestrand to Gudvangen, is a page in a living atlas where folk songs keep the shape of the coast in memory. When winter tightens its grip, the fjord's surface may freeze in sheltered coves, trapping stories and ice in the same breath. And when spring returns, meltwater sends a parade of turquoise glacial flower downstream, turning the fjord's arms into milky ribbons that glitter like liquid gemstones. Perched above Lofoten, Preikestolen is a near-perfect square cliff that drops 604 meters straight down, a geological rarity carved by glacial forces into a flat table. Do you know Preikestolen's roughly 25 by 25 meter plateau was formed when an enormous block sheared away during the Ice Age, leaving a floating slab of rock that feels suspended over the water? Hikers climb rugged paths through wind-bent pines and heathland, following routes used for centuries by shepherds and explorers. From the top, scale collapses into detail, and the fjord's turquoise ribbon looks impossibly narrow, a perspective shift few natural sights can produce. Local fishermen once used the cliff as a navigational beacon and spun tales of sea spirits trapped in the rock's shadow. Scientists have discovered tiny repeating fractures in the granite that change how the surface freezes, creating patterns that slow erosion in unexpected ways. At dawn, the plateau becomes a stage for cloud inversions that slip beneath your boots, turning the fjord into a hung sea of mist. The rock shelf links more than sky and water. Trails spill from it into hidden caves, alpine blooms, and the neighboring heights of Fjord, forming a connected theater of stone. Walking the ridge shifts your story from Preikestolen's sudden drop to Fjord's lodged boulder, a dramatic punctuation in the fjord's long sentence. Few visitors notice that when ice strikes the plateau, it emits metallic tones, soft bells that once guided travelers across fog-bound summers. Those who stay a while hear gulls, distant cascades, and a hush that makes ordinary maps feel like incomplete biographies. Respect here is not optional. The edge is magnetic yet unforgiving, and every careful step becomes part of the place's unfolding story. Later, we will descend the story to the fjord itself, where boats reveal undercut cliffs and secret tunnels sculpted by water and ice. There, the vertical drama of Preikestolen dissolves into the patient, subterranean work of tides and thaw, an unexpected continuation of the same ancient hand that shaped the plateau. Reinebringen crowns the Lofoten Islands with a near vertical viewpoint that reveals fjord, village, and sea in a single impossible panorama, one of the rarest clifftop lenses on the planet. Do you know Reinebringen's summit is so compact that the tiny fishing hamlet of Reine below seems like a model, while granite peaks and glassy fjord reflect light in ways that can mimic both midnight sun and northern lights within the same season. climb is deceptively short and brutally steep, a sweat-soaked descent that in minutes flips the ordinary into the cinematic. Stairs and weathered stone give way to moss, linted lichens, and Arctic alpine flowers that cling to cracks, turning the hard climb into a study of survival on knife-edge terrain. At the top, the world compresses. Boats look like toys, red boathouses appear as bright paint dabs, and the fjord slices the landscape into dramatic ribbons. Photographers and fishermen share the same fragile perspective, and local guides will tell you that even seasoned sailors stop there to rethink scale and distance. From Reinebringen, your eye is drawn west toward the raw coastline and east into the maze of islands where each inlet promises another photograph. Locals whisper of old navigation markers carved into rock and of fishermen who once used the summit as a lookout for cod shoals returning in spring. Those human threads anchor the sublime landscape to generations of livelihood, turning what seems like a postcard into a living map of culture and survival. As you descend the trail, the memory of altitude lingers, light on water, scent of seaweed, and the sudden intimacy of tiny houses stitched to the shoreline. Reinebringen doesn't just offer a view. It rewires how you measure distance, beauty, and what a mountain can be to a small coastal community. Many visitors leave changed by the compression of scale and the strange way the mountain makes you feel both enormous and remarkably small at once. And when you follow the narrow road back toward the village, each turn reveals another angle you missed from above, promising that Reinebringen will call you back for a second. Different sunrise. Svartisen is the second largest glacier on mainland Norway and one of the rare ice masses divided into two distinct ice caps. Do you know Svartisen's Engebring outlet descends almost to sea level, making it one of Europe's lowest glacier fronts? Nestled in Nordland, just south of the Arctic Circle, its blue ice and ribbed crevasses carve a landscape both brutal and delicate. Scientists walk its surface to measure ice flow and uncover layers of trapped air that act as time capsules of ancient climates. From close up, the glacier is startling. Walls of cobalt ice, moulins that swallow meltwater like dark shafts, and thunderous calving that reshapes nearby fjords. Yet few visitors know that under the ice lie rivers and caverns carrying meltwater toward the sea, invisible until spring floods reveal their mouths. Reinebringen offers one of the most accessible glacier experiences in Europe. A short hike or boat across a fjord brings you within meters of moving ice. Guides point out striations and moraines that trace centuries of advance and retreat, each ridge a chapter in a warming story. Local fishermen say the glacial runoff changes currents and fish runs, linking Svartisen directly to the life and livelihoods along the coast. Walk away from the ice and the landscape softens into birch forests and tiny settlements where the meltwater-fed streams once powered mills and now feed hydropower stations. Hidden within those clean streams are stones polished by glacial torrents and seeds of stories about how ice carved Norway's jagged coastline. Because Svartisen's meltwater sculpts fjords and feeds the sea. Our journey naturally follows from glass blue ice to the archipelagos it helps create. Later, you'll meet the islands and fishing communities shaped by this water. But first imagine standing on the snout of Reinebringen, feeling the cold breath of millennia. What you will discover there, the sound of ice moving, the smell of freshly crushed tsunami, the tiny fossils trapped in blue ice, changes how you see these northern waters. There is a quieter, almost secret spectacle here. Pockets of ancient ice that preserve pollen, volcanic ash, and stories of storms long before modern records. Hold that thought, because the melt that escapes Svartisen carries those stories into fjords and currents, and they reappear in the islands we'll visit next. Perched 650 meters above the Fjord, the Stegastein viewpoint point juts out like a glass prow over one of the world's deepest fjords. Do you know that this 30-meter-long cantilevered platform was built to frame the fjord so precisely that visitors often feel they are standing inside a moving painting? From here, steep mountains plunge directly into water, so still they mirror the sky, creating an optical twin of cliffs and cloud. Designers deliberately left the railing low and the floor wide, so the landscape becomes the stage and human presence recedes into perspective. In summer, the viewpoint opens onto carpets of alfreezed wildflowers and distant waterfalls that stitch the ridges together with silver threads. By contrast, winter cloaks the scene in crystalline frost, and on rare clear nights, the northern light can ghost across the fjord's surface. Stegastein acts as a hinge between high mountain roads and the fjord villages below, linking the scenic Aurlandsfjellet national tourist route with the village of Aurland and Flom. Follow the road down, and the experience shifts from panoramic vertigo to intimate fjord life. Fishing boats, wooden boathouses, and the narrow rails of the Flom Railway. Local guides will tell you how glaciers carved this chasm over millennia and how each visitor reads a different history from the same vista. Yet the viewpoint's greatest trick is how it compresses time. A single breath here feels like a museum of geological epics and human stories. Photographers come for the impossible vanishing point, but lingerers come for the silence that teaches you to measure depth in seconds, not meters. When you leave Stegastein, the road curves toward the Norway Fjord, a UNESCO-protected arm of water whose narrow passages extend the same dramatic language of rock and scan. Trolltunga's slab of rock hangs horizontally 700 meters above Ringedal's Vatnet and jutes nearly 10 meters outward. Do you know, Trolltunga was sculpted by Ice Age glaciers that froze and snapped the mountain into its tongue shape. The hike to reach it is as much a pilgrimage as a viewpoint, crossing moraines, alpine lakes, and exposed ridgelines. Seasonally, the trail transforms from snowbound silence in late spring to a carpet of wildflowers by midsummer. At sunrise, the stone seems to catch fire, bathing the fjord below in copper light that photographers chase for years. By afternoon, clouds can wrap the cliff in mist, turning the drop into a vanished horizon and tightening the heartbeats of visitors. Local folklore says trolls once used the rock as a lookout, a story that gives the place its name and mystique. Geologists, meanwhile, read the same stone as a ledger of pressure, ice, and time, written into Norwegian bedrock. Photographs flatten the vertigo, but cannot give you the sense of wind and the scale beneath your feet. Turning from the cliff edge, hikers often continue toward hidden lakes and lesser-known ridges that few travel. Those quieter paths lead toward villages and ferry points, folding Trolltunga bow into the network of fjord routes. In that way, this single rock becomes a gateway, a dramatic punctuation in a sprawling landscape of water and salt. To stand there is to hold a conversation between human daring and ancient geological processes that shaped Norway. And if you listen closely, the valley below will answer with the slow, persistent language of glacier and river. Planning your visit means respecting limits, booking when necessary, and leaving no trace on the fragile alpine tundra. In the end, Trolltunga remains a narrow, silent stage where geology, myth, and modern travelers briefly meet. Vøringsfossen plunges 182 meters from the edge of the Hardangervidda plateau, creating one of Europe's most dramatic waterfall drops. Its thunderous curtain of water has carved the Innerdalen gorge into steep basalt walls that shine with ancient glacial scars. On misty mornings, the spray forms fleeting rainbows that seem to float above the river, each color suspended in cold Nordic air. Dozens of rivulets join the main fall, feeding a turbulent river that has guided travelers and tamed ice for millennia. Vøringsfossen's name carries local legend told by fishermen and shepherds who once crossed the Hardangervidda, warning of hidden currents and sudden mists. Those stories found new life when engineers carved viewpoints and a narrow road from Fjord, turning a remote natural force into a pilgrimage for photographers. As you descend from Vøringsfossen, the landscape shifts from exposed plateau to orchards and stave churches tucked into green coves. That transition is Norway in microcosm, raw glacial highlands folding smoothly into fertile fjord edges where people have lived in dialogue with water. To stand at Vøringsfossen is to witness an energetic link between ice, stone, and sea, and to feel how one place flows into the next. The waterfall's constant motion is a reminder that the landscapes we visit are still being written, river after river, season after season. Follow its course, and you will be led toward wider stories of the fjords, glaciers, and the communities that shaped and were shaped by them. Vøringsfossen remains both a singular spectacle and a hinge in Norway's geography, where highland forces meet maritime calm. Its spray invites curiosity, and its trails point travelers onward to the next wonder hidden around the bend. Hardangervidda holds the largest expanse of alpine tundra in Europe, a windswept plateau where ancient glaciers once carved a moonscape of lakes and ridges. Do you know Hardangervidda shelters one of the continent's last wild reindeer herds, following migration routes older than most nations? Ascending from the steep fjord walls, the landscape opens into boundless horizons that can erase the notion of scale. Granite and lichen, black rivers and silver tarns stitch together habitats that feel both fragile and unimaginably resilient. Here, mosses carpet stone like velvet, and rare Arctic alpine flowers bloom in pockets warmed by the midnight sun. Birdsong of ptarmigan and the occasional cry of golden eagles punctuate a silence made deep by years of isolation. Paths once trodden by Sami herders and their reindeer still guide modern hikers across weather that can change in minutes. Come summer, the tundra erupts in color, and the midnight sun stretches the day into a long, bright labor of life. Scientists come here to study climate memory locked in peat and permafrost, clues that connect local change to global shifts. Tree-line retreats and rare plant migrations tell a story that could reshape how we understand northern ecosystems. Travelers who cross the plateau find that each ridge leads logically to the next wonder, from glacier tongues to hidden valleys. Hardangervidda is not an endpoint, but a bridge between the icy highlands and Norway's green coastal fjords, a living corridor of motion. Hidden beneath jagged peaks, Innerdalen Valley in Norway is the country's only protected mountain valley, where original alpine flora and untouched moraine formations persist as they did centuries ago. Do you know Innerdalen Valley? Tucked beneath the jagged peaks of the Trolltunga Massif, harbors endemic plants and a microclimate that makes glaciers recede slower than surrounding regions. The valley's green bowl is ringed by steep granite walls that funnel winds and water into a single silver thread, the Innerdalen River. Hikers who follow that ribbon of water find themselves carried from moss-carpeted meadows into alpine lakes, no bigger than a postcard. In the distance, the slopes rise toward Trolltunga, a connection that has guided shepherds, geologists, and painters for generations. That link between Innerdalen and the wider Trolltunga range explains how rare plant pockets survived the last ice age here when they vanished elsewhere. Local stories say shepherds once navigated the narrow passes to trade wool and cheese with villages down in Sunndalen, weaving human history into the valley's geology. Today, those ancient routes lead curious travelers from Innerdalen toward Saltstraumen and the fjords, turning a mountain walk into a corridor between wild highlands and coastal life. Because Innerdalen connects to broader trekking networks, a single expedition can move you from secluded alpine solitude to the vertiginous walls of Romsdalen and the famous Trolltunga. That continuity makes the valley not just a destination, but a thoroughfare of geological memory and living ecosystems. Visiting here is to witness continuity. Plants, people, and pathways that have endured by bending to the land, not reshaping it. And in that endurance lie surprises, insects and flowers that bloom on schedules set by the valley's unique microclimate, not the calendar outside. Innerdalen teaches that preservation can be active. Shepherds still graze seasonal flocks, and scientists still map the delicate lines of biodiversity. Walk slowly, and you might see a species that survives here and nowhere else, a living thread linking past to present. But the valley also points outward, inviting travelers to follow the water and the trail toward fjords, waterfalls, and the cliff faces that shape Norway's myths. What begins in Innerdalen becomes part of a larger story, of mountains opening into sea, of valleys that connect communities, and of secrets that wait to be discovered. From the glassy stillness of Hardangervidda to the jagged mirrored peaks of Lofoten, Norway stitches extremes into a single landscape. Its glaciers feed the fjords, its mountains funnel the winds that birth the northern lights, and its sheltered fishing villages open onto the screaming Atlantic. You felt the hush beneath Preikestolen's cliff, and then the rumble of the Atlantic Road, both born from the same restless geology. The midnight sun that bathes Svalbard's polar deserts is a distant cousin of the long summer evenings in Tromsø, where the sky can explode in color. Even the man-made threads, stone wharfs in Bergen, red rohrbuer in Sognefjord, are woven from the same relationship between sea and stone. Travel from the fjords inland, and the landscape tightens into Jotunheimen's granite spines, where rivers begin that will cut new fjords a million years from now. You have seen glaciers that glow electric blue, and ice caves that sing when the tide presses through them. But what stays is how each place leads naturally to the next. A day on a kayak becomes the first line in a story that ends at a mountain summit or under a dancing aurora. Norway's secrets are not isolated sites, but a chain of experiences coast to crest, dusk to dawn, where every turn explains the last. That is why the country feels less like a map of destinations and more like a single, unfolding journey. Go home with more than photos. Carry the memory of light filtering through ice, of fjords that hold centuries, and of nights so bright you forget to sleep. If you leave Norway with one thought, let it be this: the wild here writes its history across water, Sognefjord, and every visit reads a new chapter. And if you come back, those chapters will already have changed, ready to surprise you all over again.